Okay, so this month's global exploration of anxiety was chosen by our Bucharest chapter and illustrated by Evelyn Bundor. Imagine for a second that you have to write an email that goes out to 200,000 people. You spend all week on it, making sure there are no typos or broken links. You schedule the email. You walk into the office and the first thing you hear is, the most important link is broken. It's too late, the email is registered by the servers, it's now a beam of light carrying information through fiberglass under our oceans. Imagine that feeling of failure, sweaty palms, concerned look by colleagues, heart rate thumping. Or better yet, what if you stopped imagining? Anxiety is a story that we tell ourselves. It's a magnification of possible failures paired with self-talk that undermines our chances of success. Anxiety is created from within, not outside. Self-sabotage may always be part of the creative process, and the sooner we can accept that, the clearer we can be in the decisions we need to move forward. And now, on that note, the man you came to see. People think of Rob as the happy guy on TV, the successful Emmy winner, and he is those things. But of course, he wasn't born with an award in his hand. Rob has faced many years of anxiety-ridden challenges, and despite professional success, the real lessons were happening behind the scenes. Rob has spent 20 years telling other people stories of hope in the face of tragedy because he understands it firsthand. Today, he'll be joining us to share a story to tell in his words, make a mess into a message, and to help others deal with and face their fears and anxieties. The other day, him and I sat down so I could prep for this talk with him, but instead, he turned the tables and started interviewing me pretty much immediately, and it quickly turned into a therapy session. He's just the type of person to get to the heart of things quickly, and he really sees the best versions of people, even when they're not seeing it themselves. I am ecstatic to welcome my friend, Rob Stewart.
So when it's time to go too long, just do like this, okay? Hey everybody, how are you? It's really good to see you here today. And if you would have ever told me that I would be doing a talk on anxiety, I would have probably had a panic attack. I'm Rob, and I am really glad to be with everybody here. Anxiety has been part of everything I have ever known. And everybody in this room has a story. And my advice to you today for this next few moments is to not compare yours to anyone else's, because you will devalidate yours. You will do the opposite of what you need. Your problems are your problems, and they're just as big as anybody else's. I was born in a really happy family, and I grew up loving the land and gardening with my family and planting seeds, and I just loved the earth and being around people and watching things grow. But as I grew, there was a seed that was planted in me somehow, and it doesn't matter how we get this, but it was there, anxiety. And it was part of my foundation, fear. And when I was a child, you don't know how to describe what that is. It's just something that's there in the back of your head. And do you know what I'm talking about? I mean, okay, good. So if you've had fear, you know that it can marinate in you, and it can marinate into some very unhealthy ways. With that said, I had a great childhood and a great growing up, and I was happy, and I was an overachiever, but I also started overachieving at some things I shouldn't be overachieving in. And I'll just jump ahead. I had this whole thing prepared for y'all last night, and it's all gone. Gone. So let me just be real. I want to tell you my worst so that I can help one of you be your best. And if you can learn anything through the mistakes I've made in my life, just one of you, then that will be so much more important than anything that is ever written or said in a bio about me. Because the awards that are mentioned for my job really mean nothing to me. They're simply a reason and an excuse to share a really messy story. And that's one that I've told of other people's for 20 years, and today I'm telling you mine. So I, in college, had a ball, so much so that I barely remember it. And my drinking took off to the races. I mean, I got through college, I did fine, I was headed to law school, but I just really loved partying. And it was fun. But I looking back, noticed that it kind of turned on me, and it was all a coping mechanism that was dealing with that anxiety that I felt in my roots. And those anxiety triggers are nothing but alarms in your body, telling you multiple things, but in my opinion, those alarms are telling you you're not doing the next right thing. And those are the little things, like, do I get up and go do this? Do I get dressed and leave the house? Just the simple daily choices, unmade, can take you in a much longer forest of fears of anxiety. And that's what happened to me. And so I was just off, and I decided not to go to law school at the last minute and went and did a TV internship, fell in love with the business. Clearly now I know why, because it was different every day and I could tell someone else's story and never have to address my own. And I did okay with it. I could do it, and I did that in South Carolina for 3 years, and I had this root in me, though, always that I wanted to tell positive stories. It goes back to growing up in that garden. And I also would have to show up on people's doorsteps on their worst days, right? You know, if the news crew comes to your door, something as bad has usually happened, especially now. And so I tried to carve out ways to tell positive stories all the way throughout, but I just wasn't feeling it on the inside. And on the inside, I was drowning in my fears and anxiety, which none had roots in evidence. So for me, fear is a couple of acronyms. And I want to show you the first one. And this is not mine. I did not create this. But it's false evidence appearing real. Again, this is no creation of my own. It's something I learned in a recovery program. And it's so interesting how our fears, you know, if this building were burning, that's a fear. If you were in cardiac arrest, that's a fear. Most fears, 99.9% of fears, are not reality. They're fake. But when you don't address them by doing the next right thing, those fears grow and they manifest and they come out in unhealthy ways. So I'm going to fast forward to when I left South Carolina, having done 3 years of hard news in a weekly positive segment called A Ray of Light. And I would do that once a week with someone just to do 3 minutes of inspiration on television. I moved to New York, and that partying continued. And I always said, and I heard myself say it earlier, it turned on me, and that's not the truth. The truth is I stopped addressing my issues and just kept going forward in life, working like a dog. In New York City, it was hard to just get out of the door in the morning and get to work. And everything changed for me on September 11th. And it was, I want to be really clear about this, because when those buildings fell, it was, and I'm one of those people that compares my problems to others, so I think I have no really room to talk about this, but this is my story. And when those buildings fell, it was as if something inside of me went with it that had been growing all along. And all of those false evidences appearing real became reality to me because I never addressed things that weren't real. And so what does life do? It throws you right smack dab in the middle of it. And I reported on September 11th for a long time. And I did it in ways that it was hard, seeing things and reporting things from everyone running up to you and giving you the piece of paper saying, have you seen that people truly thought, and we thought we were going to find their family members, right? We thought they were just missing, but they weren't. And about the 5th day in, I saw my first glimmer of hope. And mind you, when that happened, I was already doing unhealthy habits just to get through the day. But I then validated, well, I have to do that now to get through the day. So really, I turned on myself. All of that happened because the moments I missed of doing the next right thing had built up so far that I was broken. I was empty. There was nothing there. And so, but hope came in. And I saw for the first time the fire trucks leaving Ground Zero. And it was so odd. Why are they driving away? And everyone looked, and we were on the Hillary Clinton Parkway, which is the Henry Hudson on the lower west side. And everyone started turning, and they followed the fire trucks going away. And I just remembered this scene of hope, and people started clapping, and then crying, and then cheering, and then that was that moment when things began to seem heroic. And it was all based on hope. And that was the story for me that day. It was a story of hope. We saw something good coming from Ground Zero. And in my life, I felt like maybe I could start to turn my fear into something else. But for years of going the wrong way, moments going the right way are exponentially farther and quicker because you get verifications very quickly when you turn that fear into something else. And it's another acronym, and it's face everything and rise. And you also, by the way, could say face everything and run, but that won't help you. This is not my own quote either, but these are those noteworthy moments in my life that have etches on my heart. And when I heard it, it rang true to my soul. And so I began to face everything and rise, but it took years to realize what some of those things were, and one of those was quitting drinking. So I moved from New York after September 11th. That was sort of my crumbling. And I left New York. It took about 1.5 years to leave, and went to Philadelphia and started doing working with the PBS station there, where I could get into some different type of news and telling stories. And this whole time I felt like I was really doing good because I was telling good stories, but I'd not worked on my own at all. And I don't know about you, but if you go through life with a foundation of wonderful love from your family and friends, but fear, anxiety-based, it will eat away the smile of your spirit, and it will make your soul turn into a place of hopelessness. And anxiety is huge. Unaddressed anxiety is so much bigger. And to address it, you ask yourself in this very moment, what is the next right thing? We all know right from wrong. What I didn't realize was that was big picture. It was the little decisions that I didn't make along the way. And I started making those little decisions, trying to turn things around for me that had gone in the wrong direction, drinking too much, overspending, running up credit cards, making myself feel good about things when nothing worked. And so it took quite a while to quit drinking. I moved to California based I moved here with a relationship, and that quickly fell apart about 3 years after I got here. And I noticed that the things that I did for coping mechanisms for anxiety, celebrating and having fun with people, had turned into a party of one. And all of a sudden, isolation began. And when you isolate, your fear explodes because you have no one to show you reality. And I really, really started searching for signs. I've been a person my entire life that believes in signs. In fact, it was pointed out to me today on the name tags. Whoever Lee is, thank you for losing your name tag, because it says, if anxiety is a gift, what can it teach you? Anxiety taught me that it almost killed me, that I about died of my own making. And I also learned from anxiety that I can thrive of a greater making. And that is by not letting the circumstances distract me from my calling, that a diagnosis is not a destiny. And by diagnosis, I mean of anxiety, because you can take that anxiety diagnosis into any direction you want it to go in. That we are of light, that we are meant to inspire, and that when we live in an anxious body and state, we do the exact opposite to ourselves. And that affects everybody around you, so much so that you subconsciously isolate. Because the truth is, you don't even want to be around yourself. And so, how do you get out of that? How do you work your way out of that? I didn't know. And my partner left. And so it was time to, you know what, or get off the you know what. I mean, you have to make a decision, or you got a real problem. And so the one person that I knew I could get away with everything with was gone. And I will not talk about the circumstances of that, because in relationship fallings apart, there's many different stories. And this is a wonderful person, just wasn't meant to be. And I have to learn from that. And what I learned was this: every moment of communication matters. And it's so interesting because I didn't have talks with that person like this after a few years. In your life, if you're not communicating with someone authentically, you're allowing subconscious fear and anxiety to permeate. Whoever you are with, your closest person, you need to say your worst fears and hear them and hear those anxieties. And as you say them, that false evidence stops being real. When they stay in your brain, this is a committee up here, a forest of fears. And when you let it out, those trees come out of the clouds, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's so weird how you have to share your dirt to feel your best with someone. But I just like Rebecca was talking about, we sat down and did our normal, hey, how are you stuff. But then when we got real, and we talked about some really bad stuff, but we left there thinking, I just love that woman. I mean, like, there's truth and authenticity, and there's beauty and freedom in it. And so what I have learned through anxiety is that it's really about this moment. If you don't address it and you continue moving forward without acknowledging that it's there and discussing it with someone, it will go down a very dark road in many different ways. For me, I remember back in New York, I would have panic attacks every time I would cross the Connecticut line. Don't know what happened, but I would cross it, and I would have an anxiety attack. And and they're bad. I mean, you think you're dying with an anxiety attack. And what I really realized was that it was an alarm signaling, stop, stop, stop. You've ignored this for too long. And I'm an extremist, so I had to wait until I could actually, it was just everything had ended for me to fix it. So I checked myself into, the truth is I checked myself into rehab. And it was here in California. And she asked for some pictures, Rebecca. Now this, looking back on this, this is what had happened to me for unaddressed anxiety. In 2 years, I gained 75 pounds. And this was actually a good day. I remember this day. I had moved the shoot till later in the day probably because I was hungover. And then there's another one. And this is interesting to me. I asked her to crop this and to take the rest out just so you could see how sick I was, which nobody mentioned anything to me about it, by the way. Nobody. No one said, why have you gained so much weight? Why are you sweating all the time? Why are you sick? All of it was anxiety, unaddressed. And she didn't crop it. And I look at it now and think, God, there's signs all over that. The Elk Grove Police Department drove to the station to get me to do a story on them. And really what I really needed to see was I needed them to take me away. I mean, I needed an intervention. And so shortly after that, I checked myself into rehab. And I arranged to have a private room so I could isolate and just meditate, and which I didn't even know what it was. And I thought it would be this spa. And it was a house in Citrus Heights, I think. And they dispense the medication to you to keep you calm from having anxiety attacks in the garage. And it's the truth. That's rehab. And that's California rehab. It's not Kardashian rehab. It's real work rehab. And so I wouldn't leave my room. And the door, I heard a knock at the door, and it was a therapist, and she came in, and she said, how do you feel today? And I said, well, I'm on 3 days of not drinking. And she said, no, how do you feel in this moment? And I said, I don't know. And she said, that's the perfect answer to unlocking your anxiety. You don't know. We can take that one down. But that's what addressing anxiety can do. You can get healthy, but it takes time. So 4 years ago, I was that other picture. And then this happened. Now, I use that award as a platform to tell you this. All I did to get that was to do what I was called to do in the very beginning. And I ignored the signs all along the way because of anxiety. I knew I was called to tell stories of inspiration. And because my brain was uninspired by the power of anxiety and fear, I ran from it and did the opposite. You have the choice today. How will you stop those fearful, non-evidenced thoughts? And the way you do it is by connecting with someone else. We isolate in our crazy making because we're making ourselves crazy. And we think there's no way in the world you'd want to share that with someone. The truth is, when you share that, not only do you help yourself, you set that other person free. They realize they're not batshit crazy too. And I also learned something from someone in this room who taught me that unaddressed anxieties and fears and the things that come from that are standing in the way of every blessing that is meant to come to you down the road. Standing in fear blocks you from the blessings that you're meant to receive. And it's never too late to start. It doesn't matter most of this room is very young. I don't care how old you are. At any point in life, you can turn that ship around by being in the moment, which is what that woman did to me in rehab. She said, "How do you feel now?" I said, "I don't know how I feel now." And she said, "Well, just break it down. Now. How do you be in the now? How's an acronym? In this moment, be with me, honest, open-minded, and willing. Just to this one moment." And I said, "Okay, well, honestly, I feel like crap. Open-minded, I'm here. By the way, the first night of rehab, I ran away. But I went back the next morning." And then willing. And willing simply just means I'm open to at least just explore the opposite of what I feel. It's not the big things, it's the little things. In each moment, honest, open-minded, and willing. Those moments add up exponentially, and they take you to where you're meant to go, in the now. The now becomes weeks, and the weeks becomes months, and then all of a sudden, you've lived in those moments in the area that you were called to live in all along. My main advice to you is get out of your own way. There are no limits on your life. It's all about love. It's all about community. And I love this quote by Marianne Williamson. And I believe this is your quote for each of your souls. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our fear, our presence automatically liberates others. That can be your story when you leave this room. And it can be, my deepest fear is that I am not inadequate. That your deepest knowledge is that you are worthy, that you are enough, that you won't be afraid of the light. You won't marinate in the darkness. And that as you just simply come to life, your presence will set yourself and others free by just being real. Cut the crap conversations, how's the weather, all that bullshit. Just be real. Get to the heart of the matter. How are you doing? Fine. No, you're not. Fine is another acronym which I can't say here because this is being recorded. But I just want to tell you this. If you could see you like I see you, what you would see is the smile of your soul. You would see a light that is so powerful that it drowns the thought of an iota of fear or anxiety. And if you walk in that light that you know you have inside of you, in a world filled with amazing things, the sky is not the limit for anything, particularly for you. That's it. No. You're standing up for yourself is what you're doing. And I love that. So whatever that was, follow it.